in there, you got your scent in there, now take a look around. Guys get into this mindset that they need to go on and find the next bed. You found one, now learn it. Learn what you need to learn.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's another day, or when you get this down, then move on. Because you can't kill that deer unless you know what's going on there. And you have to walk around and figure that out. Look at the rub lines, look at the trails, look at everything you can. And if it doesn't give you the intel you need, take an educated guess and throw a stand at it. Don't sit there all frustrated saying, I don't know. That ain't going to help you. You don't know, learn. You might be able to learn it that day, you might not. But if you don't, throw a stand in and find out what goes on. You know, there's a lot of beds like this where he's got several trails going on. He might be going this way, that way, this way. I don't know. I've looked as hard as I can't figure it out. I'm going to hunt this one day, I'm going to hunt that one day, I'm going to hunt that one day. Let's see what happens. And when you hunt it, even if that deer don't show up, if that trail's beat with fresh sign and there's rubs along there, you probably just weren't there the right day. But if you get in there and the sign's all dried up, there ain't much going on. Try it, nothing comes by. Okay, and you move to point B, and now you see the sign. Well, now I got a pretty good indication whether I killed the deer, saw the deer, or didn't, that he is traveling that route at that time of the year.
Right.
And sometimes, regardless of what you want to happen, you have to go out there and put some time in order to put those pieces together. Now, getting back to what I was saying before, is you should really seek out those places that have a lot of sign and very little hunting pressure. You know, we looked at that place we scouted when we did the hill country bedding talk part in the video.
Yeah.
You came with me. We looked at that property. That property has a road that comes in like this and a parking lot. Okay. Then it's got a big hill that wraps around, kind of like this. And there's some good bedding up in here. There's some good bedding up in here. There's some good bedding up in here. But the best bedding is right here watching that parking lot. And every time we find a big buck there, that's where it is. There's a path, a legal access that takes you in like this, and then you're legal to go. But this is still public. And nobody goes and hooks around and sets up right here.
Yeah.
Except one guy. And that guy's been pretty successful there. This is the spot where those big bucks come out. But they're watching you.
Yeah.
You know? And this has the sign. This has some sign. It's got some good sign. It's an okay spot. And we've had some action back in here. But when you get mature buck action here, it's almost always right here. And you got to learn to look for that kind of stuff. You got to look for everybody that goes in this parking lot is probably walking along here looking, and people randomly hunt this a couple times a year.
Right.
I mean, it ain't a lot of pressure or I wouldn't be in there. But there's guys that hunt this. There's nobody that hunts this but me. I go in there once or twice a year and I have a premium hunt, and there's usually something big there, but I got to do a big snake around to get in there undetected.
Yeah.
I got to let that deer watch me walk past thinking I'm one of these guys. But this is the kind of stuff you got to look for. Where does nobody go for whatever reason? And it might be that maybe this ridge all of a sudden has another little ridge out here that's in the middle of the fields that's an island. And maybe it isn't so isolated or whatever, but it's going to be a spot where nobody goes. And when you get into a spot where there's a lot of big bucks, using that spot, there is going to be big buck sign there.
Yeah.
You know, the trouble is, you might scout a whole season and find one or two of those, and scout a lot.
Yeah.
So it takes a long time to build those spots up. So you're going to have to settle for some of these spots. But my point is keep looking. You find these spots like that I've collected over the years, and you've seen some of the hunting spots that I take you into.
Right.
Is there big buck sign there? Generally.
Yeah.
Generally. There are spots where we kill big bucks year after year where there is no sign. But it's usually lower populations of bucks. If you have a low population of big bucks, those big bucks will bed in a spot like this and never have to leave a rub because there ain't nobody going to challenge them for their bedding spot.
Yeah, they're not competing as much.
Right.
Right. So yeah, I think your big lessons there, the whole sight, sound, and scent. And as Dan alluded to, you find the bed. That's just step one. Now sit in that bed and try to think about how that deer is entering it and exiting it and why. Is it food? Is it hot doe? Is it, you don't even know what reason, but there's a heavy path going in that direction. And, is it gonna take more than one sit to operate around that perimeter?
Yeah, don't lock yourself into, this is the tree I'm hunting in this spot. Look around, find options for different winds, find different trails, figure out how you think that deer's getting in and out of there. Look at your access and exit, and if you access that correctly, from the right direction, with the right wind, you can probably hunt one of those trails and have that deer never even know you were there, even if he goes up that trail.
Right.
And then the next time loop into the other trail, and you can treat that like separate hunts.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
We get through like 2 questions.
Yeah, pretty much. We got through 5 questions so far.
Wow.
Yeah. So, next one. Hunting areas with extremely difficult entries, higher success rate on mature bucks, so that's a question. Do you prioritize hard to access spots when pressure increases? And then the next one is very similar. How do you hunt extremely complicated areas on public land where trails can't be cut? Let's say, for instance, a 900-acre or 2 to 3-year-old pine clear cut full of thorns on the north side and east sides with 120 acres of hardwood that's full of great buck bedding and sign.
Those are 2 separate questions, man. Do number 1 first.
Well, yeah, but they're overlapped. But yeah,
They do a little bit, but
okay.
do number 1 first.
So first one is extremely difficult entry points and high pressure.
No, it wasn't. Yeah. Read the question again.
Hunting areas with extremely difficult entries. Higher success rate on mature bucks?
No.
Okay.
See, you're trying to lude me into a certain way. My biggest bucks have come from easy entries. Park and lot, and walk 50 yards and shoot it. They've been easy entries for my biggest bucks.
Okay.
So.
Why have all mine been the hardest possible entries possible?
Because I don't want to hunt there, so I give you that.
All right.
Not at all. I think that a lot of times I walk 2 miles through crap and half drowned, swim a quarter mile, have a helicopter pick me up and take me 100 yards, drop me back off, to get out to these spots that are in the middle of freaking nowhere. You boat into them, and there's a tree stand sitting there. I'm not seeing that right alongside the road.
Yeah.
I'm not running into people right alongside the road. No matter how hard it is to get into these spots, I'm running into people. So my best stuff has absolutely come from the easiest stuff to get to.
Oh.
And that's not politically correct. Most guys want to tell you, I'm a man and I get these bucks because I work harder, I go further, I go deeper, I do things that nobody else in this world will do. That's just not true. There are people that do the work, that push your way back there. You get into less people, and you do get good hunting back there because less people get back there less often, but people are still getting back there. The best stuff is the overlooked stuff. Now somebody could argue the overlooked stuff is so deep that it's overlooked, but most of the time I get back into those spots way back and there's still people hunting back there. There's still people getting back there.
Well, and some of the reason for that is, depending on the size of the property that you're hunting, sometimes what is a long trek for you to get back to, someone else has adjacent private and it's a tenth of the distance and they get back to that spot really easy. So, when you're on public, sometimes someone has an access point that you don't have access to, and they're getting to those spots much easier than what you can do.
Take that spot we were talking about where we go 2 miles to get back to, in that swamp that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
You get back to that swamp 2 miles back. If the guy on the next property was hunting that, he'd have to walk 100 yards to the spot.
Yeah.
But we got to go 2 miles to get back there.
Right. So there is spots like that, so it's tough. All right. So Dan shoots all his bucks and easy to get to spots. That's what we've learned today, folks.
Okay then. So what was this question about navigating back there? Or?
Do you prioritize hard to access spots?
Do I prioritize them? No.
When pressure increases?
When pressure increases? No. The overlooked spots get even better. Because the pressure goes to the middle, it goes to the sides, it goes all over the place. I don't look at it as hard to get to, easy to get to. I look at where are the deer. I don't think a deer cares how hard it is to get back there. He cares about where are there no people. If you have spots that are way back, and I have a few that you have a really hard time getting to, and
Right.
The deer are there, you hunt them. Sometimes those spots, and I do have a spot like I can think of right off the bat on an island. It gets hunted. People get back there, but that particular island has a bedding area off of one tip, and so far I've had that little bedding area to myself. People that hunt there seem to hunt in the middle of it or to the wrong end of it. But I can shoot deer out of that bedding area because it's a primary bedding area all year. I'll see bucks in there early, I'll see them in there late. But the time I have the best hunting there is after pheasant and duck season have opened, and pheasant season's been open for a week or so, or and guys with pheasant dogs will walk the whole perimeter of that whole marsh through the edges of the cattails jumping pheasants.
Right.
And what they'll do is every little bedding area will have human scent in it.
Yeah.
So by getting onto that island then kingpin along that edge is going to be in that spot, and that's when I always have my best hunt is 2 weeks after that opener of that pheasant. So yeah, pressure does have an influence on bedding spots, but it ain't necessarily because it's a remote spot. It is a remote spot in this case,
Right.
but it's because it's a spot where nobody's hunting and nobody's walking through that bedding area, and there's pressure in other bedding areas that it's getting better. I get the same effect on those spots alongside the road when everybody's going out to the middle and pushing everything around in those cattails. They're coming back up to the road and bedding alongside the road.
Right.
So it's more that nobody's going into those bedding areas. Pressure helps you, but it ain't really for the reasons that he's alluding to.
So then into the next question then. How do you hunt extremely complicated areas on public land where trails can't be cut? Let's say, for instance, a 900-acre 2 to 3 year old pine clear cut full of thorns on the north side, on north and south, and on the east sides with 120-acre hardwood that's full of great buck bedding.
Is he talking about navigating through it? Is he talking about...
Yeah, the trick is you can't enter from the west because the wind is going to be strong most of the time. Would you not hunt until the wind is coming out of the east, which is rare in the south? Would you pass over these areas entirely, being hard to get into on normal wind conditions?
Well, almost got to draw it.
Yeah, so you can't trails. He says it's extremely thick. So
a lot of it has to do with navigation and wind, right? Wind control.
Right.
So I'm going to wait till I have the right wind, and most of the time I'm just going to put a stand on my back, bust my ass back there, and I'm going to go back early. And when it gets dark, if I don't have a kill, or if I do, I'm going to figure out some way of getting back out of there. It's just how it is. It's just day hunting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we can attempt to draw this, but so obviously north
Okay.
is going up. So he says pine clear cut on the north and south.
Okay, so like a strip here and a strip here, right?
I guess it's kind of like that. So.
So that's the real thick stuff.
Yeah, this is the thick. And so we can't enter from the north. That's what I'm getting out of this.
So we're going to enter from the south, and he said something about hardwoods in there. Where are they at? The middle or the east or?
Yeah, let's see, for instance, now your pine put and thorns, the northeast sides have 120 acres of hardwoods that's full of great buck bedding.
Okay, that's over here? Over here, right?
Over here be the east side.
East side.
So this is your hardwoods.
Now I'm wondering why the hardwoods has better bedding. You think they'd
Yeah,
be
I
in the
was-
thick stuff?
I was kind of wondering that too with that statement, but
I would think there's be more action in the hardwoods because there's food there.
yeah, you probably see a lot more sign.
But I would expect the bedding to be on the edges of the thick.
And there's a predominantly west wind, so your wind is coming from this direction.
Okay.
And I think if I read this comp on public land where the trails are clear side. The trick is you can't enter from the west because their wind is going to be most of the time, would not hunt. So maybe you can enter from the north. Yeah, so you got thick thorns on the north and south, bedding is in the west.
So he's saying
Primarily
he
west
really
wind.
would like to walk up here, but the wind's not in his favor, is what he's saying, right?
Right, because it's
Trying to
always a
basically-
west wind and the bedding's here, so he's...
So he's either got to walk through thick to get around or something like that. For me, I think that I would assume if this is kind of open, did it say what's in the center?
Didn't really say.
Okay, well, I'm assuming it's thinner than the thick stuff on the sides, right?
Yeah.
I'd be looking at hunting the edges of the thick. So if I looked at this, I would be, now I haven't scouted it, he may have. But I wouldn't think that the bedding is in the hardwoods. I wouldn't expect that, at least not mature bucks. I'd expect the bedding to be in here
In
and
the
here
transitions of that
in
thick.
relationship to the hardwoods.
Right.
So I could get in here on a wind, say the wind, let's bend this arrow a little bit so it's like this, okay? Then I would take this side in, loop up, and hunt them where they come into the hardwoods along this transition here. And vice versa, if it were like that, I'd come in like this and hunt them down here. Now that's sight unseen, that's how I would assume to go at it if I hadn't scouted it. That would be my system for going in there. I'd come in right down the guts, where I get the best trail, with the wind in mind, right?
Right. If you had an off wind.
But I'm expecting them deer to be bedding in this area and this area to feed in here.
Right. Yeah, it really depends.
And you're sacrificing one or the other to hunt the other one.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be interesting to know kind of what's in here because that would play into where they're bedding in proximity.
What is
to-
key too is when they're bedding in thick stuff, they're usually on the transition edge. So looking towards the food. So the wind's blowing this way, they are going to be on this edge. So that's going to make this transport in and hunt even better.
Right.
Just don't get in vision of that edge.
Right.
Because I would expect them to be kind of watching into here.
Well, then I wonder if can you
Can you come in from this side?
come in from the east? Because then if they're here in this thicket, you just sneak up into position.
Right.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like it though because he's so concerned about the wind. The question was kind of vague.
Yeah.
Not
So I
picking
think
on you, just hard to understand.
Yeah, I think it boils down to your access, but it looks like you could get something done there. All right. So these next couple ones, it really follows kind of some of the rut stuff we talked about, but a lot of people take hunting vacation during the rut. How should a guy maximize his time during the rut and up his odds? That's the first one. I mean, we
Keep moving. Don't hunt the same stand over and over again. Maybe not even the same property. Just keep moving. I think back to my travel trips, which is I think is what he's getting at. If he's got to take vacation for rut, he's probably traveling to where he hunts. When I travel to a spot where I hunt, I've got a couple spots and destinations in mind, and I'm sure he does too, or he wouldn't be traveling to there. And I'm going to go hunt those spots, but in the morning when I'm done hunting, I'm going to probably scout for a while. And then I'm going to go hunt in the evening, and I've got a scouting period during the day. Guys that sit all day in rut travel spots typically don't get the scouting in to get onto the good stuff. You got to move around a little bit and find out what's going on. You got to take some time for scouting.
yeah.
Hunt that hot sign.
versus all day sits.
In order to do all day sits successfully in a rut, you have to really know where you're going. You have to have a strong plan. And even then, what are you hunting? I don't think those mature bucks are up running around like crazy middle of the day during the rut. So if it were me, I would have a plan to do some scouting midday.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go on a travel area and you hunt all day every day and you do that year after year after year, what are you learning about that area? You're just learning about that spot where you're hunting.
Right.
You become a better hunter with your scouting, so you take some of that time when it's not a peak travel time and learn something.
Well, and I think being prepared to move is big, because during all these scenarios, if you get up there in the morning and you observe specific things that are going on, be ready to pull your stuff down and relocate. Maybe 100 yards, maybe 75 yards, maybe 500 yards, but relocate.
I'm thinking about, I travel over to the Richland Center area a lot of Wisconsin. It's hilly area, it's a couple hours from my house.
Yep.
And when I think back, the best stuff I've gotten onto is by walking around during the day, finding sign, looking at a map, where's the sign coming from, where's it going to, and putting the pieces together and saying, okay, this is where I think he's coming from, this is where I think he's living. And looking at little properties that I haven't been on before, just going out and walking them.
Right.
And even if I got kicked the deer out of there, at least I learned something for the next time I'm there, you know.
Right.
A lot of scouting. Wear out those boots while you're up there.
I mean, here's another one, and it kind of relates to some of the stuff we talked about earlier, but talk about the difference between hunting a mature buck during the rut versus a 2 to 3 year old that's moving and running around a lot.
Well, hunting 2 or 3 year olds is fun, and it's what most people do, even though they think they're hunting mature bucks. And the reason is they're hunting funnels. You hunt funnels, and you will get lots of young bucks traveling, chasing, running, and you will get the very occasional mature buck. If you hunt mature bucks, you go to where they hunt those downwind, or where they live downwind of those doe bedding areas. You find those rut bedding areas. You find those lairs where they're living, and they're not moving around during daylight like the young bucks. I mean, it's that simple. You got to hunt mature bucks to kill mature bucks. And a lot of times those travel trips where we're hunting funnels and stuff, we're not hunting mature bucks.
Yeah, I think the challenge becomes
You gotta know a property better too.
Yeah.
You gotta learn where those big bucks are bedding, and that ain't an easy task. I mean, like I said, you know, you go into those hilly areas and stuff, and you look at those bedding areas, and you don't see heavy trails coming in and out of those bedding areas. You're probably not where that big buck lives. And if you're not having an aha moment in that point, going, man, how would you get near this? He's got the back cover, he's got the open window below him. If you're not having that moment, it's probably not a mature buck living there. And when you find those mature bucks, I mean, that is a great thing to find that bedding area, but it's also a hard task. And when you go on these travel trips and you're just hunting general bedding, you're just hunting, it's a lot easier to just set up into 2 and 3 year olds and hope. It really is. If you really want to kill those big bucks, sometimes it takes hunting some of them funnels and stuff for a few years and getting that scouting in middle of the day and learning those areas, finding those spots. Really, take a look at what I'm saying. People hear it, but I don't think they grasp it for what it is. I'm not kidding when I say the majority of those huge bucks I find are alongside the road. I'm not kidding. The majority. Get that ingrained in your head. You go on these trips, look for that spot where nobody would go.
Yeah.
Think about, and that's a big thing with me, is my mindset. It's the way I think about a property. I look at a property and look at it and you think, I'm being hunted. Say ISIS came to America and they're hunting me down and I'm here. And they're surrounding this woodlot and they're coming in looking at me, looking for me. Where would I hide where they wouldn't look?
Yeah.
That's where that buck is. I'm thinking about all these guys are coming in after it. They're going to kill this deer. He's in there and he knows it. Give him a mind. Make believe he has a brain that he can actually reason. Where would he hide where nobody would go? That's where I'm finding these bucks. I'm thinking about that property differently. I'm looking at not a deer sign or anything else. Where can he hide where nobody would look? Often it's beside the road. Often it's in a clump of brush somewhere where somebody has to walk way out of their way to go over and check. It's going to be something where nobody looks. Those deer get mature and they learn that. They can smell where you walk. They can smell where you work. You got to take that to heart if you're killing mature bucks. In the same mindset, you might do some sits on some ridiculous spots that you think maybe holds a big buck, and maybe it don't. Maybe it holds a squirrel.
Yeah.
You're going to see less deer. Your buddy's going to be sitting in a funnel on the next farm saying, I told you, I saw 7 bucks today. And
Right.
you got to be able to get over that, walk past it, and go, good for you, man. You're doing better than me.
Yeah.
But you're going to get that giant. It's just a matter of time. It's a matter of putting in your work. It's a matter of keeping at it and keeping your confidence and your beliefs up. Because those big bucks live and use a property differently than the little bucks. They're 2 different animals. And I could say that over and over again. You have to experience, you have to go out there and do it, see it, and live it to understand it. They're not bedding like other deer.
Yeah.
They have to be hunted differently.
Good. All right. So Dan, it seems that Dan has shot a lot of bucks very early in the season. Does he think it's easier to pattern bucks during this time compared to the rut? Is this correct? Any specific bedding that seems to be better during this time, so early season?
Early season, a big reason why I do well in early seasons from doing my homework, from watching these things during the summer,
Yeah.
from having that relaxed period where I'm not hunting and I have nothing better to do than to sit in an observation stand or park a truck in a spot and watch, or go check out some hunches or some things you heard people talking about or whatever. They are very patternable, but I think the easiest time to kill a big buck is late season. It's just that oftentimes I don't have a tag left. but late season is a really great time to hunt, pattern wise. But early season can be too. The trouble with that is probably more than half of the people listening to this podcast start their season a lot later than us.
Right.
A lot of my early season bucks come in early September. And, if you don't start to October, you might not have that kind of success.
Yeah, October they tend to switch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not pressure, it's timing.
Yeah, I think a lot of the, at least from what I've read and observed from a lot of the members on the site that are doing it time and time again with those early season kills, a lot of it revolves around their homework and their patterns. It's like they've built up patterns that they know from years of doing it, or they spend a lot of time in the summer observing these bucks coming to fields or coming out of bedding areas, and they know that that buck's going to be there during this time, during this wind, and when that wind happens in that first week, they go there, and they're usually pretty successful.
Yeah, and to allude back to what the guy was saying, you can see them in a remote field where it doesn't have a lot of traffic around it or something, come out the same way over and over and over again, and watch the winds and stuff, and come up with a plan, and go kill them in an open field on opening day. You can do it.
Yeah.
And you're probably not going to have that success come October or something, or a little more nocturnal.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and in the rut, I think the challenge is that you've got the variability of where that buck is going to get on a hot doe, or who's he competing with, and
Yeah, we get good patterns during the rut, but they're very short-lived.
yeah,
They can change overnight. Where the patterns with the food patterns in early season and late season seem a little more elongated than during the season. You get into the end of September through November, and you get patterns that change rapidly. 1 week to the next, it can go from green to yellow to the next week no leaves. And the food patterns change right along with that, whether it's a certain plant, whether it's a certain crop, whether it's the crops being cut, or it changes so rapidly that if you're not hunting day to day, if you're hunting, you're a weekend warrior, when you get back out there the next weekend, it's a whole different ballgame. So you learn it all over again. That's where you have an advantage when you hunt near home, is that you can watch those patterns change. The good part about it for the guy who's saying, well, I'm a weekend warrior, The good part for him is that it's a repetitive thing that happens year to year.
Right.
So you can get a jump start and say, okay, last year this is what happened this date, and move in. And that's where those good journals come in handy. If you
Yeah.
keep good dates and times and wind directions and stuff, that really helps you out.
Yeah, because they repeat themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Good. All right. Season strategy. I remember an old podcast Dan said he followed some type of rotation like swamp, marsh, early season, the hills during the rut, then back to swamps late, something like that. We get to hear the logic and explore in more detail the routine and why you do this, how you rotate around.
How's he know I didn't lie? Let's say I like marshes early season. Marshes and swampland, and the logic behind that is in marshes and swamps, I can get very close to bedding in early season and get right up on them, and there isn't really much regard to the wind when they come out, and I can get within 50 yards, and it's a pretty easy hunt. I can read marsh real well, read swamp pretty well, and you know where they're going to be and when they're going to be there. Rut, I like hills because you can narrow them down to those leeward sides, and you can get that rut cruising really well. If you learn where they're bedding, you know how they're going to come out of there based on wind and leeward sides. And hills are really prone well for rut. Late season, I like farmland, and the reason I like farmland late season is because when they get on a crop, especially food plots, if you can get brassicas out, or you get these farmers that are now, to keep their land from eroding, are planting radishes just for erosion control,
Right.
you'll get a draw to that like you wouldn't believe. And those deer will lock into that on a pattern, and all you have to do is sit back and observe, and then move in for the kill. And late season is probably the best time to hunt in farm country because of that. That's my logic between the pattern of how I hunt. And what's good about Wisconsin is we have all that. We have the hills, we have